Now, today I will be talking about natural disasters and preparation on how to be prepared for these natural disasters. Now, why should we be concerned about these things? I mean, we live in Michigan, which almost never experiences natural disasters. Well, disasters can strike at any time, and anywhere. Like the Hurricane Sandy, for example, which struck New York. Now, New York isn't in the Tropic of Cancer. It's pretty far from the equator, but a hurricane hit there and the results were pretty devastating. And when disasters do strike, they have severe consequences. I mean, buildings damaged, people injured or maybe killed. The financial, emotional, and human losses could be enormous if you're not prepared. And as the old saying goes, it's never too early to be prepared. Now, what is a natural disaster? By definition, a natural disaster is the effect of a natural hazard that affects the environment and leads to financial, environmental, and or human losses, which I've previously mentioned. Now, natural disasters come in many forms: hurricanes, earthquakes, tsunamis, these things will be discussed later on. Now, first type of natural disaster we'll discuss is a tornado, which is simply a mobile and very destructing force of cloud that creates a funnel shape, and it usually will, well, not usually, almost always will form within a large storm system. Now, tornadoes are judged by their ferocity based on the Fujita scale. Now, an F0 tornado is obviously the least severe at 40 to 72 miles per hour, and an F5, which is the most devastating, can reach speeds of up to over 300 miles an hour, which is pretty fast. Although they are destructive, tornadoes are actually don't last a very long time. Now, this is how a tornado forms. A supercell storm forms, which is a regular thunderstorm on steroids. So it's big. Now, wind shear of the storm causes the air beneath the storm to rotate. Now, as the rotating continues, a funnel will form, and if the funnel eventually does touch the ground, a tornado forms. Now, there are a few ways that tornadoes are detected. Right now in America, a general idea of where tornadoes will be located is Tornado Valley, which extends from pretty much the northern part of Ohio to the southern western tip of around Texas. Now, tornadoes, like many other things, are identified by people who are specially trained and whose careers are identifying tornadoes. Now, these people look for things like inflow bands, beaver's tails, wall clouds, and a bunch of other things which are pretty much signs for a tornado. They see something like a beaver's tail, which is pretty much, it's hard to explain, like a form of wind which travels like backwards. It's hard to explain. They'll know that a tornado may be forming in the area. However, technology such as radar is being used more and more extensively to actually pinpoint the exact location of these storms. Now, to prepare for a tornado, it's important to have, obviously, tornado drills, which are happening right now in school. And if you want to go further, you can contact the Red Cross, and they'll offer valuable information. It's also important to have supplies or an emergency supply kit. Now, emergency supply kits vary from like $30 to a few $1,000s, and it can carry things like bandages, emergency water, food, and the expensive ones might even have like emergency generators, a raft in case you need it. Yeah, and it's also important to develop a communication plan with both your workers and your family, so everyone knows exactly what to do and who to go to if something happens, which this will lead to no organization, which is the single most important thing. Now, during a tornado, if you are at home, go under a designated shelter or sturdy furniture. Note, however, that some places are better than others. For example, a window is not a very good place to go. Someplace like, let's say, a closet that's not near a window, like inside the house, that should be a safer place. Also, remember to go under sturdy furniture like a table, for example. Now, if you're at school or work, it's pretty much the same thing. You're indoors. It's the same knowledge and skill set is applied. But it's important in these situations to follow directions that are set before by a coordinator or someone like that. Because since there are more people, it's more likely that disorganization might occur. Now, if you are outside, if possible, get indoors immediately, because the single worst thing to do in a tornado is to be outdoors where the winds are most violent. If you are in the middle of a field where there are no buildings or anything, then try to find a low ditch or a sturdy building where you can hide under. This will minimize the effect of the wind that will blow against you. And if you are in a car, unless your car can go, as mentioned before, 300 miles an hour, it is not recommended that you try to outrun the tornado, as this will you will either be unsuccessful or will cause more accidents while trying to run away. And if you are in a car, you do treat it as you are outdoors. So get in a ditch or under a sturdy building. Oh yeah, and always use your hands to protect your neck and head, since those are fairly important body parts. Now, when the tornado has finished, firstly, check for anyone who's injured and help them first. Now, second thing to do is to always stay tuned for the latest information. These are especially important since the local news or radio stations could inform you of another tornado happening, or if it's safe to go outside. Always stay away from damaged buildings. If they're damaged, they might collapse. It would be bad if they did collapse and hit you. If you have medicine in glass or something, clean that up, because those may be hazardous to small children or animals. If you're insured for insurance, well, then take pictures to assess the damage. Hopefully you'll get a big claim. And always give aid whenever you can. Not foolishly, of course. In a damaged building, probably let firemen do it, but if it's just somebody who's getting trouble getting up, always give aid. Now, next type of storm is a hurricane, which is an intense rotating oceanic weather system with violent winds and a calm central eye. And this is measured by the Saffir-Simpson scale, which is pretty similar to the Fujita scale for tornadoes. But so under 39 miles per hour is actually not considered a hurricane, but a tropical depression. And it just like from 39 to 73 miles an hour, it's considered a tropical storm. And the numbers go from 1 to 5, 1 being the most docile, 5 being the most severe. Now, hurricanes are formed in tropical waters when the warm water in the oceans evaporate. When they do reach the top, they will condense and fall back forward, and this warm humid air cycle will keep on continuing. Meanwhile, the rotation of the Earth actually twirls the air around, forming the violent storms known as hurricanes. That is why hurricanes usually only occur in tropical regions. Now, they're detected by a number of ways. Nowadays, aircraft and radar attached to aircraft are able to fly over, and satellites are able to fly over the hurricanes and pretty much detect, like, see the severity and the speed and rate at which they're traveling. In olden times, ships would measure sea temperature, since hurricanes tend to get stronger in warmer weather, again because of the warmer air cycling. And yeah. Now, to prepare for a hurricane is actually quite similar. In fact, I've discovered all the disasters, it's quite similar in how you prepare for them beforehand, which is build an emergency kit just like a tornado. Hurricanes do lead to floods, so learn about evacuation routes from your house or your town. And it's always important to protect your house, because that's your most valuable asset. During a hurricane, like a tornado, you always listen for the most up-to-date information. Maybe they'll deem it safe, or maybe they'll deem it safe to evacuate. You don't know. Turn off electronics, since you really don't want that in a storm of water. If you have a boat, probably get that ready. Have supplies, as mentioned before, ready. And if you are told to evacuate, always evacuate. Don't be like the couple of dumb people in New York who thought that they didn't have to. If you're told to, do it. When it's done, continue listening to the radio, as they might announce, say, storm surges or maybe property loss information. Stay alert. When you are told to evacuate, don't go back until it's deemed safe, and when you do go back, check for gas leaks and spilled medicine and things like that, and make sure you fix those things, because it'd be bad if you didn't. Earthquakes. Oops. Okay. It's frozen. Sorry. It's frozen on me. Sorry about this. Right here. Earthquakes. Earthquakes is a sudden and violent shaking of the Earth's crust as a result of movements within the Earth. Earthquakes are measured within the Richter scale, which is a logarithmic scale from 1 to 10. Now, what that means is that a level 5 earthquake is 10 times more devastating than a level 4 hurricane. It is not a linear scale. Now, they are formed through tectonic plate motions. When two plates collide, for example, the one near California, they might rub or bump into each other, and this causes shocks that travel through the Earth's crust. Now, the shocks will travel through the Earth's crust, and when they do reach the surface, will release a violent shock. Now, earthquakes are detected by a seismometer and a seismograph. What this does is it pretty much detects vibrations in the Earth, and then when it jiggles a needle here, it will shake. So the more the needle shakes, the more violent the earthquake is. Prepare for an earthquake. Fasten all objects. That's obvious, since you don't want it flying around. Always store the delicate, precious, or dangerous item in a safe place. So when they do break, they aren't on the ground where people can get hurt by stepping or slipping on them. If you know you're in an earthquake heavy zone and you have a defective gas line wiring, fix that, because if it's already defective and it gets shaken violently, the results will be quite bad. Gas escaping everywhere, your power lines failing, or yeah. And again, develop a plan like the other two. During an earthquake, if you're indoors, take cover beneath a sturdy piece of furniture like a tornado. However, do not stand beneath a doorway, as that may collapse and bury you under a couple of pounds of rubble. And remain indoors until it is deemed safe to go out. If you're outside, move into the open, which is a terrible thing to do in a tornado, but in an earthquake, if you are in the open, there aren't many things to fall onto you when they tumble. And if you're in a car, same really. Outside, you get into a clear area and you shut off the vehicle. That way, if your car is tipped over or like a glass shard breaks, like attacks or something like that, your engine will not, let's say, explode. Since an earthquake almost simulates the effects of a car crash. After an earthquake, always be prepared for aftershocks. A big, usually over 7 on the Richter scale earthquake will lead to several smaller aftershocks. So just because a big shaking has stopped does not mean that earthquakes have stopped entirely. Always help people, always be informed, avoid damaged building, that's pretty obvious, and clean up the broken glass or anything else sharp that you might slip on or liquids that you might find. And again, assess the damage to your house so you can bill the insurance agency. Now, we're moving on to something different, which is tidal wave versus tsunamis, which I've recently learned are not the same thing. Tidal waves are just, well, tidal waves, which are just like waves in the water you see every day. They're caused by the gravity of the moon and the sun and the rotation of the earth pulling and pushing and the wind. I mean, they're only really dangerous if maybe they get a little big, but they usually aren't. Tsunamis, however, are completely different, and they are things caused by underground earthquakes. Now, how are tidal waves, not tsunamis, detected? Well, as I've said, they're just normal waves. And they're just detected by predicting high and low tide. So it's pretty simple. Tsunamis are underwater earthquakes, so they are detected somewhat like a regular earthquake with like a seismograph. Only it can't go underwater, so it's just you use like a buoy or something on top of the water that will detect the vibrations it feels underwater. Now, tsunamis start by having like a disturbance underwater of a couple hundreds of feet, where like a sudden jolt moves water up at 2 meters. However, since it's a couple hundred meters deep, by the time the 2 meters gets up, it's already carrying about 500-600 meters worth of water, and that 500-600 meters of water will magnify and exponentially grow until it is an enormous tsunami. Now, as said before, they're by buoys and tidal gauges. Now, how do you prepare for this? Well, hurricanes, tsunamis, earthquakes and tsunamis usually go hand in hand, and hurricanes and tsunamis have similar devastating effects. So if you prepare for the other two, you should be set for this one. So if you have money, invest in a shelter, which will not blow away, be washed away by a tsunami. Always have an emergency kit and always have a communication plan. During a tsunami, go to the highest point. The highest point will usually be the roof of your house. That way you won't drown. Always tune in to the radio station and have your first aid or emergency disaster kit ready, just in case someone gets injured or you have to survive on your own for a few days. If you're outside, move as far away from the shoreline as possible. Follow your community's evacuation routes, and again, try to get to the highest point possible, maybe a hill or something, as you will be less likely to be swept up by the water. If you are in a car, again, treat it as if you're outdoors and never try to outrun it. When it's finished, stay away from flooded and damaged areas. Again, those tend to break. I'm actually feeling this is really repetitive, but it's a disaster, so I'm sorry if this is repetitive, but it is what you do. So stay away from debris, help, and check food supplies. I'm going to skim over this because I've already said it. Wildfire, which really aren't natural half the time. They're caused by idiot campers, but half the time they are. So, I'm going to discuss it anyways. They're formed by lightning, which was what happened a couple months ago in the Upper Peninsula, by idiot campers, as mentioned above, before, who leave their fire on, and fire spreads quickly. And it spreads from dry, unwatered trees with rapid wind. They're detected, well, it's impossible because it's hard to detect idiots, and it's hard to detect if a lightning will strike a tree. Prevention: don't leave your campfire unattended. Don't be an idiot. Put out all flames. Remember that annoying commercial about like the bear, where it's like, remember to put out all wildfires. Do that, and that's all really you can do. If you are caught into unfortunate circumstances of being caught in between a wildfire, always follow instructions by a park ranger or whoever's in charge, because they'll know where to go, and there's usually some designated wildfire location. Don't wear things like polyester, because those burn quickly. They may look nice, I guess, but they're not good for fires. And find a dormant place to stand. If you try to outrun it, you won't, and you'll be more likely to injure yourself. Finish to realize that dangers can still lurk. I mean, just because you don't see a fire doesn't mean there isn't a fire maybe a couple miles away that might come again. And usually the park rangers will do this, but notify authorities and people like that, so they'll be able to document and hopefully help the injured. And that brings me to the end of my presentation. I hope you enjoyed it. Here's a thought-worthy quote by Jimmy Wallace: "Sometimes it takes a natural disaster to reveal a social disaster," which means that our society may be ignorant to the devastating effects of a natural disaster. So thank you, and those will be my citations.